What's up? What's up, guys? What's going on today? How does it sound? Can everybody hear me? Let me know. Welcome back to a live stream. Happy hour. Welcome in, Lexi. Man from Bogota. Crypto Marco. Mateus. And Nightrider. Welcome in, guys. Can you hear me okay? I think it's okay. Okay. We have got a lot to talk about today because there's a lot going on. And I'm going to talk, I think, a little bit more than normal. We'll try and get to some questions, too. Obviously, get your questions in. If you want to guarantee that your question will be looked at and read and answered, send me a super chat, even if it's the lowest amount, just because it is highlighted and will not get lost in the shuffle, just in case I don't get around to everybody today. I'm still going to try, but I just want to throw that out there just in case. So I want to talk about smart contracts because basically in any scenario at this point in time, the respectability within a crypto project is smart contracts. That's just the baseline nowadays, right? Back in the day, Bitcoin, in its early days, it was new technology, and that stuff really wasn't invented yet until Ethereum came out. First platform, obviously, to launch smart contracts. But nowadays, you kind of need smart contracts in order to be respected in the space because technology's advanced. We've moved forward. Bitcoin is kind of grandfathered in. I know you can do some stuff on it, but it's not fast, not scalable. Whatever, it doesn't matter with Bitcoin because it is the OG in the space. But for any project nowadays that is going to pop up into the space, it needs smart contracts in order to have the respectability in the space. And Caspa is no different, although, you can argue till you're blue in the face that it doesn't necessarily need it because of its tokenomics, because of its purity, because of its fair launch. In order to get respectability in the rest of the market, it's going to need smart contracts. That's just the way it is. And it's right around the corner, which is a good sign because what that's going to do is kind of give use, right, to the project. It's going to bring in new developers. It's going to bring in new users, and it's going to create a fun atmosphere for things to be done, and you can play around in basically. And so if I can pull up my internet here, I know most of you guys know this by now, but I'm going to reiterate it because it's literally right around the corner. And I think smart contracts, along with tier 1 exchange listings, is going to be the catalyst for Caspa this coming cycle. And I think we're going to get what we want, but we're going to have to be patient a little bit longer. And I see some questions here about Q4 Altseason and that Caspa's bleeding. The whole market's bleeding, so Caspa is not in and of itself bleeding while the rest of the market is pumping. So there's nothing to worry about there. I know there's some macro things going on and all that kind of stuff, but in my opinion, all short term, and we're just going to have to be patient a little bit longer. I'm going to kind of explain a little bit later what I think is going to happen this cycle when it's all said and done, and kind of the roadmap that I see this cycle taking, which is obviously different from last cycle. We're going to talk about the 2017 cycle a little bit as well, because there are some interesting similarities, but also some interesting differences as well. But when it comes to smart contracts, back on that note again, Castlex has obviously launched its, layer 2 public testnet, which we are all able to use to an extent through Zeal. And if you don't know, now you know, and go watch my last video because I explain exactly how to get involved in testing the network, and you can win, well, not win, you can be airdropped some Zeal tokens for participating, which is kind of cool. All you have to do is go play around with some fake money and get used to the ecosystem, and you can potentially get some Zeal tokens dropped into your wallet for free just by playing around and helping the network stress test, basically. So, Castlex is the first one. It's a layer, they call it a 1.5, it's technically a layer 2 on top of Caspa, where smart contracts will be launched, and they, I believe it's either them or Egra Labs that is using mostly Rust language as far as their coding language, but it's EVM compatible, and Ethereum developers will also be able to use it very seamlessly, which is also a good thing because all of the major blockchains that are EVM compatible usually do pretty well in a bull run. Okay, so Castlex is the first one. We've also got Egra Labs here, who I guess they're calling it the Caravel Egra testnet, and they are going to open up their testnet for everybody to start testing in, let's see, so the DevNet was opened up in April, so devs have been actually testing and experimenting with it. It looks like in July of 2025, which is next month. So we'll be able to hopefully help test that as well. And in Q4, they are going to launch their mainnet if everything goes well and smoothly on the testnet. And Q4, you guys got to remember, that's only, a couple months away at this point? Maybe a month away, 2 months away? Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 months away. So everything is going to get really crazy, like in a very short window of time, I believe, in this cycle. And then Egra Labs is just another one of those layer 2s that are, it's a ZK rollup, I believe also EVM compatible, that's launching on Caspa as a layer 2 with smart contracts being built. They already have a bunch of people that are building or planning on building on Egra Labs. And then I wanted to ask about the Sparkle network, because that is also a layer 2 that's going to launch on top of Caspa as well. And Grok has let us know that the Sparkle smart contract framework is set to launch on Caspa by summer of 2025, with estimates ranging from June to August. A prototype is in development. The full development having started on December 1st, 2024. The launch depends on the completion of the Crescendo hard fork scheduled for Q1 of 2025. So that's obviously already finished, and that will upgrade the network to 10 blocks per second. So that's already done. So I would imagine they are going to be potentially announcing that they're going to go into test net pretty soon as well, which means we're going to have 3 different varieties of smart contracts launching in a very short window of time, where I believe it's going to bring a lot of hype and a lot of eyeballs to Caspa and its network. If nothing else, curiosity, people will come over and try it and see how fast it is and see how easy it is to use and hopefully stick around, right? That is the goal anyways. And so the key thing too about the smart contracts being launched on Caspa is that all of the transaction gas fees are going to be settled on the main network, right? So you're going to have to use Caspa and buy Caspa in order to transact on these layer 2s, right? Everything's going to be settled on the main network, and those gas fees are going to go to the miners, which is also an incentive. I know the gas fees are very cheap, but with enough transactions and the price raising, that should be enough to suffice the miners and keep people mining and keep them happy, right, to secure the network as we go forward. And so that is the big difference between Caspa's layer 2s and Ethereum's layer 2s, because in Ethereum, each of the layer 2s are their own entity and they settle in their own token, which actually gives 0 gas fees to Ethereum, right? And so it kind of almost makes the main net not even matter at that point. They're almost their own layer 1s on top of Ethereum, just working on their own. So I'm not even sure what the whole point of it was. I think Ethereum messed up in that scenario, but Caspa is not messing up in that scenario. Everything will be settled on the main network, which is huge, especially for a proof of work project that needs the gas fees to feed the miners to keep up the security of the network. It all goes hand in hand in a circle. So that's it was designed the right way for Caspa. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Let me know what you guys think too, as far as, are you guys excited about smart contracts launching very soon? And have you been able to go test out the Zealous swap decks? And what do you think of it? So, next up on the list here, I want to show you guys the network. The Caspa network has been a lot more active over the last 7 days. And I imagine that a lot of that is coming from actually being able to get on the network, make some test transactions, and kind of, get in there and play around and test everything out, which is kind of a logical reason why the network is seeing an increase in transaction count and active addresses, although it looks like today the address count went down a little bit, but it had a major spike right here from 15,000 to almost 25,000 active addresses. And that could be multiple wallets as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be new people, although I bet you a lot of it is. Transaction counts are going from in the last 7 days, 150,000 to 210,000. So 100,000 transactions, and I believe this is per day. So yeah, so 187, and then up to 208,000 transactions, and so that's good to see, obviously. And I think as mainnets start to roll out, we're going to see that increase even more in a more aggressive spike when it's all said and done, because you're actually going to be able to transact with real money, real Caspa, and have some fun inside of the network, which should be exciting. All right, let me get to some questions. We have a few more things to talk about, but I'll try and kind of split it up here, and we'll do a few questions in between. Let me turn this off for a second here. Okay. Lexi, we want Caspa to skyrocket. Yes, we do. That is a fact. We are all kind of hinging on that right now. And also, what's up, Kat? What do you think about Q4 alt season? So, my stance on this is that we're still going to have an alt season in Q4. I've said this before, but maybe there's some new people on the stream that haven't heard it before, from me at least. Alt season is usually very short, and it's a month or two in Q4 of the post-halving year, and that is when the crazy shit happens. And we all kind of imprint that in our mind, and that's what we are, kind of yearning for from the start of the next cycle to the end of the cycle, because our brain remembers that quick euphoric. Sometimes it seems longer than it actually is, but it kind of sticks with you, and you just want to feel that feeling again. But we've got to remember that it's a very short spurt, usually, and it's a very aggressive spike to the upside. And monetary policy plays a big part in it, but we're going to actually take a look at 2017 and look and see what monetary policy was like back then. And some of you guys may or may not be surprised. But I guess when it's all said and done, to answer that question, I do think we are going to see an alt season in Q4. I think things are lining up for that. I know they don't seem like it now, but you've got to remember that, we have like 3 or 4 months left, tops, before we start seeing some real action. And markets can, flip on a dime. There's going to be a point in time, I think, in Q4 where we're going to forget all about what happened right now, and how boring this is, and how frustrating it is, and how angry everybody is. I think it's just going to be, once that euphoria starts to hit and altcoins really start to move, everybody's not going to care about what's happening right now. ¿Qué pasa? Win Lambos, yeah. Hopefully Q4 is when we bank all of that money And then maybe, first quarter of next year, we can all kind of decide what we want to spend some money on. That would be nice. Crypto Marco, let's go. Mateus, KASPA is bleeding. Yes, it is bleeding. So is the rest of the market. That's just the way it is right now. We are in that period of the market, unfortunately. It will pass. It seems like it's not going to pass, but I promise you it'll pass at some point. King Caspa, let's go. I'm ready to be rich this year and get the hell out of my 9-to-5 BS factory. You and a lot of other people, my friend. But it's going to be the ones that can push through what we're going through right now that are going to end up making it in this market. Because this happens every cycle. And it's got to get to a point where people throw in the towel. And there's a lot of people that have thrown in the towel already. The few that don't are the ones that are going to be handsomely rewarded in Q4 this year, I still believe. Maybe we run a little bit into like January of next year, but I wouldn't bank on that yet. We're going to have to monitor everything. And some coins will top out earlier than others as well. So it's kind of like you've got to monitor the situation very closely. Like, for instance, if Caspa in October, November gets, a Binance and a Coinbase listing, as well as smart contracts are, coming out full speed, and things are getting crazy, it's in the news, the hype is crazy, then that might be a time to start selling some of your Caspa if you're going to sell this cycle. Or any other coin for that matter. I'm just using Caspa as a reference point there. Because usually, it'll get that hype-driven short, push upwards, and that's typically when you want to start selling. And there's usually a catalyst behind it, whether it be tier 1s, and in Caspa's case, it's going to be a mixture of tier 1s and smart contracts, I believe, that's going to actually catapult it. I think the market manipulators know how to play with your emotions, so you give up, sell cheap. That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens, and that's the point we're in right now. Eventually, they'll send the markets up because they want to make money. It's that simple. It's just a matter of when they want to do it. I imagine, like talking about the war that's going on, or just, I guess started. Was it yesterday or the day before? I don't know that is necessarily set up, but the market makers will definitely take advantage of something like that and play it, into their hand of cards. Anything that happens, macro, exterior, outside of the markets, they're going to make use of it inside the markets as best they can. All money in. Would you stack some Zeal? I probably would. I don't have any yet. But it seems like it's doing very well, and it's the first DEX on Caspa. You can potentially correlate it to something like Uniswap or PancakeSwap on Binance. Those did very well out the gate. And so I think especially if you're staying inside the Caspa ecosystem with majority of your token buy, Zeal is one of the better ones, yeah. Nightrider, all I've been doing is stacking Caspa for months. That's all you got to do. That's how people win in this market. A lot of people are selling right now because of a country bombing another country, and if that's your mentality, then you're going to lose. You got to remember, like, technically that's probably considered a black swan. You got to remember the whole COVID scenario. I hope I'm allowed to say that on YouTube nowadays. But that was a black swan, came out of nowhere. Markets crashed. And then within a couple months, they were back up to where they were before and then just kept climbing, right? So market makers take advantage of catastrophes, I guess you could say, black swans, or anything that they can, and they benefit from it while the vast majority of retail sells. Imagine if you were in the markets in 2020, right, and you'd been there all bear market, and what was it, January of 2020, I think it was? You'd been stacking all bear market through 2018, 2019, and the pandemic hit. Everything crashed back down to where it was in the depths of the bear market, basically. What if you sold all of your coins because you got scared just to see them all go back up to the exact point they were at before the pandemic a couple months later, and then go to new highs and go into a bull market? How pissed off would you be at yourself watching that happen in real time and probably getting FOMO and buying back in at the top? If I were to guess, a lot of people probably did that. You just got to be smart and patient and understand that there's going to be bumps and hiccups along the way that you may or may not be able to account for. But usually, those type of events are good buying opportunities, the vast majority of them. So, speaking of that, if we go back and look, so I'm going to show you guys what I think is going to happen this cycle, because it seems like it's playing out this way. Now, before we get too specific, I want to go over, I found on my TradingView account the chart that I've been wanting to show for multiple streams now, but couldn't find it for whatever reason. And so this is the altcoin market minus USDT on their Bitcoin pairs, okay? I can't find the one that goes back to the 2017 cycle, but we don't necessarily need it, because this bottoming out line down here, this blue line, is when altcoins usually bottom out against Bitcoin before we go into an alt season. Okay? Even in 2017, just trust me on this, I can't find the chart, but I've seen it. Altcoins hit this exact trend line as well. And they hit this trend line in November. They were sitting at this trend line in November of 2017. Okay? Now think about that for a second, because we're stressing out right now that altcoins are up here, right? They just put in a new low against Bitcoin, which is actually a good thing, believe it or not. we're stressing out that altcoins are sitting right here and we don't have that much of a bull run to go. Or we don't have that much time left until Q4 when we should see the parabolic phase of the bull run with altcoin season. Imagine being back in 2017 and altcoins on their Bitcoin pair were sitting at this blue trend line in November. And everybody's probably like, oh shit, we might have messed up here. And then November, December, and like the first week of January saw absolutely incredible gains. The market ripped to the upside. So, we are in, what? June right now. And we're sitting right here. There's a solid chance that we keep bleeding until we get the rate cuts, which is in theory in September right now. Okay? Even if that's the case, we're still 2 months prior to when altcoins started moving in 2017 cycle. Okay? If they're sitting at this line in September, then we're still 2 months ahead of the 2017 cycle, in theory, where altcoins were. Okay? And in order to get a massive altcoin season, typically they need to hit this line on their Bitcoin pairs anyway. So this is actually a good thing, and it's going to propel us into an altcoin season. This is the the cumulative altcoin market. That doesn't mean every single altcoin needs to bleed heavily against Bitcoin. You could have some outliers. Caspa might be one of those, since we've been bleeding longer than a lot of projects have since 2024, the early 2024. So it's been, a year and a half of sideways downwards action for Caspa. So maybe it's the outlier and it starts moving before everything else. We don't know. We're going to have to watch it play out. Nobody has a crystal ball, but just keep in mind that this right here, altcoins minus USDT on their Bitcoin pairs, probably need to continue down to this blue line, this blue trend line, before we get alt season. And it's literally happening right now. And seeing this is actually a good thing. Bitcoin dominance will go a little bit higher. Also a good thing, right? What that's going to do is set us up for the altcoin season. We need altcoins to, in the public's eye, be completely dead before things really get crazy and happen. It's usually at that point where everybody is writing everything off, right? And jumping out of the market. Everything is dead. That is usually when things turn around. And I can guarantee you, people are starting to think things are dead right now. Wait till we're down here, if we get down there. Doesn't necessarily have to happen. What do you think the sentiment's going to be like if altcoins cumulatively on their Bitcoin pairs are sitting down at 4.5 million total instead of 6.5 million? That's a $2 million drop from here. People are going to be at their wits' end, I believe. And so that is the point in which I think we rebound and we really start seeing altcoins start to outperform. I'm mixing words up, sorry. Okay? On that same note, if we take a look, this is the Bitcoin chart, okay? And altcoins technically follow Bitcoin for the most part. In 2017, we had let me make this a little bigger for you guys so you can see it. This was our 2017 peak. Look at how little that looks compared to where we are right now. It looks tiny. It looks like a speed bump. Okay? And 2017 was a single top cycle, right? Like I said, altcoins were at their low on the Bitcoin pairs in November of 2017. And the market peaked in some in the end of December and some the beginning of January. Like literally first week of January, some altcoins topped. Single top. And then we went straight into a bear market, okay? Interesting thing about the 2017 cycle is that I knew what crypto was back then. I was not in the market. I didn't understand Bitcoin back then, although I'd heard of it, and I didn't even know where to start if I wanted to invest in it because fake internet money didn't make sense in my head at that point in time until I started doing a lot of research and wondering why this Bitcoin thing kept going up and up and up and up, and it piqued my interest, and then that's what started my snowball down the hill of learning and information and researching. Now, I asked Google what monetary policy was like in 2017 and 2018 because a lot of people say that a bull market is hinged on good monetary policy, right? Rates being dropped and... Sorry, I'm going to make this smaller again for you guys. Rates being dropped as well as quantitative easing. So there's more money, liquidity being put back into the economy and the markets. Now, if we look here, Google's AI tells us that in 2017 and 2018, the Federal Reserve pursued a policy of gradual interest rate increases and balance sheet reduction, which means quantitative tightening. Okay? It was gradual, but we were seeing, it says in May, I think, it was either March or May of 2017, the Fed started rate increases, which is interesting because we had a blow off top still in 2017 while rates were being increased and quantitative tightening was happening. Okay? I'm not sure about any other underlying detail that was going on back then, but nonetheless, it's interesting that maybe it's possible that even if rates do not start being cut, even if quantitative tightening does not necessarily stop fully, that we still might be able to have a very short, aggressive blow off top at the end of this year, which should give everybody a little bit sigh of relief, possibly, potentially, that even if monetary policy doesn't necessarily play ball with us, we still might be able to have a blow-off top. It'll be very short, violent, but a blow-off top nonetheless. Fed raises rates by a quarter percentage points each time, once in 2016. So they raised rates 3 times in 2017 and 4 times in 2018. In 2019, they started cutting rates again, which is kind of when you saw things start to move upwards again, right? Towards the end of 2019 in last cycle, which I was there for. Now, they started cutting rates in the bear market in 2019 of last cycle, which lends us to look at the difference between the cycles, okay? and this is just Bitcoin, obviously, but you've got a very short, aggressive blow off top here and only one top. In 2021, you have two tops. And I'm wondering if you had two tops because they started cutting rates back over here in 2019, right? Which led to this first top. And then obviously they gave everybody a ton of free money in 2020 after the pandemic. And so I wonder if things got way too heated way too quickly, where we had to come back down in the summertime and reset everything before we barely made a new all-time high. So we double topped last cycle. This time, things are way different monetary-wise, similar to 2017 actually, although we might be getting the best of both worlds because we still had a blow-off top in 2017 with rates being hiked and quantitative tightening starting. But we also might get, before this end of this year, what we got in 2021. So they held for longer, right? And so we didn't get overheated too early. Maybe Bitcoin has, but the altcoins definitely haven't. And they're going to start cutting rates and in quantitative tightening just in time for Q4. And that gives us plenty of time for a couple of months of insane price action to the upside, right? So we're not going to be in a tightening scenario or a raising of rates scenario, but they held it long enough to where it's going to be extremely bullish when they do start to cut rates. So I think we might have somewhat of a mix of these two cycles, and I think that's just going to lead to a single top, but an aggressive single top, if I were to take a guess. Because we don't have enough time for two tops in this cycle. Remember, the first top and altcoins were running at this point too. Not as much as Bitcoin, but they were running. And some altcoins topped out in, I think this was like May. Let me see here. April. So the first top was in April. It was early 2021, Q2, and then the second top is when we normally get tops, November 21st. And I just wonder if we didn't have this first top, right? So we might get a combination of both of these tops, which might even take us higher. Because it's going to be more explosive, kind of like 2017. Everybody talks about the 2017 bull run being the best one because things just went absolutely crazy really fast. And this one was a little more confusing because it threw a curveball in the summer where we went back down and reset and then came back up and barely made a new high. And some altcoins topped off in this peak, some topped off in this peak, made it very difficult to take profits because we had no idea what was going on. It was very different from this. And I'm wondering if we're going to be more similar to 2017 this time around where we get one blow off top. We don't have to worry about the summer now because we're already going to be past that. Is it going to go back down in the summer? And if it does, are we going to be able to come back up and double top? Or should we sell now to cover our asses in case we don't? If we only get one blow off top, it makes it so much easier to know when we should sell, right? Because we don't have to worry about any other variables in there, potentially. And so that's kind of what I hope. And I hope it's going to be extremely violent to the upside because it might be just a mix of this. We're going to have the monetary policy, hopefully, of the 2021 cycle, but the short, violent spurt up of 2017, which happened during a rate hike cycle and quantitative tightening. So it looks like best of both worlds, in my opinion. But we obviously don't know. We're going to have to wait and watch it play out. So when it's all said and done, though, I am extremely excited about what's to come at the end of this year. I have gotten nervous a couple of times. I am human, and I have thought to myself, like, am I doing the right thing? Just like all of you guys probably have. But when it's all said and done, the 4-year cycle is played out every single time, and I'm just going to trust the process until it doesn't play out. And we're hoping this is not the time that it decides not to play out. I don't think it's going to be. So, and I always look back into like wallet number 2 and these big market makers that are accumulating like crazy. Not just Caspa, but Ethereum's being eaten up alive right now. Institutions are buying the hell out of it right now. OTC. And why would they be doing that if we're about to flip into a 3-year bear market? You know what I mean? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So as long as the big whales are buying, then we should all feel comfortable in theory about buying, because that means there's probably something good on the horizon. And the only thing that we have to worry about is making sure that we sell around the top and we don't ride our bags back into the bear market. That's the only thing we got to worry about. Unless you want to. I don't recommend it, but you're more than welcome to. But that's what I see on the horizon for this year. It makes sense to me logically. It looks like monetary policy's playing ball or going to play ball. Even if we get the rate cut in September, we still have, according to 2017 bull market, plenty of time for our blow off top. So hopefully that relieves a little bit of weight from somebody's shoulders or relieves a little bit of stress about we're running out of time. Because 2017 tells us that, we don't need a lot of time. And things can look ugly even into Q4, and we still have enough time for a very large altcoin season. So keep that in mind. And if anything changes, then we will address it. But until then, I still think things are looking good for Q4. In my opinion. Giorgio bought the dip today. Excellent job. This is a good time to buy because, Bitcoin held up great. Think about that. There was, and I don't mean to make light. Obviously, I'm not making light of anything that's happening overseas right now. But, when another country bombs another country, that's usually comes out of nowhere, although there's probably some red flags for people who are paying attention. But that's considered potentially a black swan. The markets crash, and Bitcoin, didn't even break 100K. It might still, but if 100K is its new floor and it's going to hold that is extremely bullish for the market. Altcoins obviously are going to continue to bleed for now, which is fine. But typically a black swan, like we might have just gotten the last couple days, altcoins are down double digits, and usually history will tell us that these are excellent times to purchase some more. Whatever you're buying, it's a good time to purchase. Uno, dos, tres. Are you going to keep your nacho, and did you see Broke meme on base? Same creators as Croak. Yes, I have seen Broke. I do not own any. I don't want to... Well, let me answer that first question first. I am keeping my nacho, at least for now. I don't really have a whole lot as far as dollar amount, so I'm probably just gonna hold on to it and hope for like some sort of nostalgia type pump out of it at some point. I would de-risk though if you have a lot of it, just in case. I would probably move a good percentage of it into something else that is relevant, because we have to think of the fact that Nacho is the cat of Shy, and Shy is no longer part of the Caspa family. And that might be a good thing, that might be a bad thing. That might mean it dies and never comes back. That might mean it has some nostalgia to it and it pumps because of that. We don't know what's going to happen. But if you shouldn't have a huge percent of it anyways because it's super risky. But if you've got a big percentage, I would de-risk into something else and keep a little bit of it. That's just my opinion. And to answer that other question, I do know what Broke is, definitely. I don't own any of it, although it is a pretty decent meme coin. I'm the kind of investor, though, that's not going to dip my feet into every single meme coin on the market and hope for 1,000x out of one of them. I kind of keep my portfolio a little bit more tight-knit. I have a few meme coins for sure, because meme coins and layer ones usually pump the most in a altcoin season. But I don't want to just go out and throw $50 $100 into every single meme coin out there, because you're going to lose in the vast majority of them. But Broke is a decent meme coin though, so I would not that I'm recommending it, but it would be a decent one to invest in. SkyGreen, while the whole market is red, Zeal is hitting new all-time highs. Yeah, and that is one of the things about this is a good point here, because a lot of people were talk about the fact that Caspa outperformed everything last bear market. It was a new coin, and it's got a lot of hype around it, right? Zeal's the same way right now. It's a new coin, it's got a lot of hype around it, and it's got a very low market cap like Caspa did back in the day. And those type of perfect storm scenarios can do very well. But that also says something for the Zeal token, hopefully moving forward, that it's going to be a success. Be more. Castlex is using Rust. Yes, they are. But they're also EVM compatible. Yeah. Nightrider, Lamborghini. What is an Aventator? SVJ or Ferrari F8? If Caspa hits $10, why not both? If Caspa hits $10, I'm right there with you. We can buy matching Lambos. In the Caspa teal color, because that would be sweet. Nate, yo, what's up? Thanks for hanging out, Nate. Kevin, roughly how much Caspa do you have? Doesn't have to be exact, but could you give a range? I'm not even going to go that route, just for safety reasons. But I will tell you that it's about 40 to 50% of my entire portfolio. It varies depending on where we are and what's pumping and what's not pumping. I believe it's closer to 50% right now, though, because things like Sui have been correcting a little bit, and Solana as well, which are my other top two coins. SkyGreen, I'm testing Zealous every day, multiple hours a day. That's good. You're probably going to get a pretty solid airdrop then, as long as they, come through with what they say they were going to do. That's pretty cool. What do you think about Cookie DAO? I've never heard of it. What network is it on? I'll look it up here. Right. Hold on a sec. Bam. Let's move this. Sorry. Working on the fly here. Cookie DAO. Sounds like something from like either Cardano or Binance usually have the food names. It is a Binance chain. No. Yeah, it is Binance chain, so that is correct. I don't know, man. DAOs they are a little sketchy to me because obviously it's supposed to be a community thing. But the insiders can, have a bigger say than other people. And I don't think DAOs usually pump all that much. Because there's, what's the excitement behind it, It's like a community-driven DAO. It just doesn't sound very appealing to most people, which is why I always just recommend, for the most part, layer 1s and meme coins. Meme coins get a lot of hype because of the cartoons and the names and stuff, and, the pumping potential. And then layer 1s are just by far the most solid utility plays, because everything runs on top of them, so they benefit from everything else. Everything's pulled back to the main chain, and the growth benefits that main layer 1. I don't really go that deep into network-specific coins built on top of certain networks. But that's just me personally. I mean, it could do well. If we have an altcoin season, a lot of things are going to do well, so. Nightrider. Last week I just got written up at work for being on my phone when I was buying Caspa. Let's go $10. Wait for that day where you can just walk into work and flip off the boss who wrote you up and not even care at all about it. I hope you get that day. Because that means all of us are going to get that day. Master Chief, I feel like a winner. No price predictions here. Just going to DCA out when the conditions are better. waiting for those conditions and tier 1s and smart contracts. Be real people and you'll win. Yeah, be real people. Yeah. Yeah, it's patience, and you've got the right attitude here because we don't know what the price is going to go to. It could top out at 70 cents. It could top out at $7. I have no clue, right? I still think, I think it's going to fall between $1 and $3, but we don't know that. And so we just have to watch the market, where we're at in the cycle, and what the hype is like. Smart contracts are going to be launched. If they get the tier 1s, we're going to see a ton of hype, probably a massive spike in price. And if that's somewhere in Q4 towards the end of the year, then that would be the time to start selling. When everybody else is getting FOMO and buying because they just came in as newbies, we're the ones selling them our bags at a much higher price than we bought it for. And unfortunately, that's the way the markets work. Some people get screwed and some people win. And hopefully the people that get screwed stay around and they can screw other people next cycle. That's the unfortunate part about the market, but you got to be greedy and you got to be selfish, kind of, in order to make some money. So, just the way it works. Zeal just hit new all-time highs as we speak. Did it really? Yeah, it's now number 1 in the ecosystem. It passed Nacho, which doesn't necessarily surprise me now. But if Nacho can stay like in the top 4 or 5, then it'll still be relevant. Yeah, Zeal's trending. Yeah, it's at almost 12 cents now. Congratulations to everybody who bought Zeal at the launch or any time in between then and now. You're up some money. Awesome. Cat Daddy is wallet number 2. Oh, yeah. Well, do you follow me on X? Because if you do, you would know that I actually posted that the other day. Just to kind of evaporate some of the confusion around the wallet. Man, if I was wallet number 2, I would be in very good shape. Requus, what's up, KD? I'm doing a shot of Fireball now and watching your stream to make me feel better. Awesome, man. Fireball, huh? I haven't had Fireball in a long time. Although it's decent, it goes down pretty smooth. But I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you watching. I'll be playing that song Lamborghini Mercy all the time. I don't know the song. I'll have to look it up. Giorgio, do you think Caspa will be moving up again during the next bear market like it did this last one? So, I love this question because there is a lot of people out there that are dead set on the fact that it is going to outperform again next bear market. And although anything is possible, I would be very cautious in that mindset because you've got to look at it from the perspective of this last bear cycle. It was brand new. It had a very low market cap, and Ethereum went from proof of work to proof of stake, which left a major hole in the GPU mining atmosphere. Okay? And Caspa was quickly the coin that a lot of people turned to mine after Ethereum left. And when it's got a small market cap and it's brand new and it's getting hype because it was GPU mineable when the big boy Ethereum was not anymore and people were looking for something to turn to, it is very easy to gain market cap in a situation like that from a very, very low, like fraction of a cent price and, a couple $1 million in market cap. It was basically from zero at one point, but when everybody really started looking at it, it was, probably a couple million in market cap. Very easy to pump the price in that scenario. This next bear market, Caspa is going to be not new anymore. It's going to be more well-known. It's going to have smart contracts. It's going to have things, positive that it didn't have back in last bear market. But if I was a betting man, I would say that it's still going to have its 90% drawback like the rest of the market. And if, for any reason, it decides that it wants to outperform in the bear market, it will do so after that giant pullback with the rest of the market. It's not going to just keep going up while everything, including Bitcoin, goes down 85%. There's no way in hell that's going to happen this next bear market. If it is going to outperform, then it's going to be after its roughly 90-some% drawdown in the bear market. And for any of you guys out there that think Caspa is not going to follow the rest of the market down 90-some%, then go to the doctor and check your brain. Because if Bitcoin goes down 85%, Caspa is going to go down at least 85%, if not more. And it will go down more because it's not Bitcoin. So, to answer that question, to those people, that's why I recommend not holding your whole entire bag through the bear market. Depending on what we top out at is going to depend on where we bottom at, but we will see it go down at least 85%, and I guarantee it's probably going to be mid-90s as far as percentage that it goes down. And then from that point on, if it does outperform, right, and gets a lead on the next bull cycle, then that might be plausible. But it is going to have its correction. So that's why I recommend people, at bare minimum, take your initials out. I would highly recommend taking some profits. I am going to take about 80 to 90% of my Caspa and sell it. And then I'm going to buy back in the bear market at lower prices. Because that is the easiest way to make the most amount of money in crypto. On a relatively short window, 4 years. Everything's going to go down. We're going to see dirt cheap prices next bear market. And that's when you should be buying again, which is usually like 16 to 18 months after the peak. I think, that being said, I think Caspa is going to be a multi-cycle coin. So what I'm saying right here is not like disrespecting Caspa, but it's crypto, and we just have to make sure that we cover our asses in case something blows up in the bear market, right? What if Jonathan decides to leave? What if, who knows what could happen? But you want to cover your ass just in case something happens and Caspa doesn't, for whatever reason, do what it says it's going to do. You'd be awfully pissed off at yourself if you did not take profits. That's just my 2 cents. You guys can do whatever you want to do. But covering your ass is always the best route, in my opinion, just in case. And I'll say this again because I've said it before, but technology moves extremely fast. Look at how fast AI moved in the last, 3 years. Crypto could potentially move that fast as well. And who the hell knows what's going to pop up next cycle and get all the hype. We just don't know. We don't know. In a perfect world, Caspa's technology should be around forever, right? But technology moves, and we just don't know the future. Nobody can predict it. It is what it is, and cover your ass is my best advice. Just in case. Sorry, that was a very long answer for that question. Hopefully I didn't bore anyone to death. The tax in Australia for crypto gains is 40%. I hope Caspa goes to 3 to 3.5, or at least being able to sell at a good profit. Yeah. Yeah. Even here in the United States, although hopefully we over here get zero tax on, or capital gains tax on U.S.-based cryptos, which, I don't know how you even take a decentralized project like Caspa and say it's U.S.-based. But right now we roughly have the same amount of taxes, so I feel you on that one. It sucks because you get taxed, every step of the way from the time you get paid. Everything you do is a taxable event again. Drains us of our hard-earned money. Mila, Crypto Galaxy is still insisting Caspa will go to 4 to 5 to 7 this bull market. What do you think about it? It's possible. It's crypto. Anything's possible. It's hard to say. We don't know. I still think we'll fall in between $1 and $3, and that's what I'm going to say about that. I hope Crypto Galaxy's right, because if we go to $7, I will be sitting pretty, and so will a lot of you guys. And then we can all get down and bow to him for predicting $7. But honestly, I don't know. It's gonna depend on how violent this altcoin season is. Because there's a world where it could, and there's a world where it won't. Nacho is still the number one meme on Caspa, the only one who build have the best community, a lot of strategic partnerships, utility. It may not change. I agree with you on all of that. And it is still the number one meme. I'm just, I don't know if it's going to stay the number one. Time will tell. But like I said, I'm not selling my Nacho, so I hope it does very well. I know the team is good, and I know they're very active, so that gives me a little bit of hope. And hopefully they can turn this whole thing into a positive and run with it. Arcade fan, where do you see Caspa in 2030? Market cap, price-wise, I suppose. Do you? I don't know what the last part of that means, but Like I said, I think Caspa is going to be a multi-cycle coin. I think it will be around still. You got to remember, a lot of altcoins don't make it through 2 cycles. They're still technically there, but all they're doing is bleeding, and they don't ever reach their previous all-time highs again. And usually, that's their second cycle that happens, right? Because in the first cycle, there's all the hype for a new coin. I think Caspa is going to be able to surpass that and cement itself. Market cap wise, it's hard to know, because we're gonna have to see this cycle where it tops out at market cap wise and price wise, and that'll give us a better idea of what it can do in its second cycle. It hasn't been through a cycle yet, so it's hard to relate it to anything based on history at this point. The top layer ones last cycle, if we want to see where it might fall this cycle, were, roughly at $80 to $100 million or $100 billion, right? Yeah. 80 to 100 billion in market cap. And so, if it lands in the top 10 or just out of the top 10, that is a good target, or even higher, because there'll be more money in the market this cycle. So in theory, the top L1s would take a step up and be worth a little bit more than that. And then next cycle, I just don't know. I want to see what it can do the rest of the bull run this cycle, and also if they continue building, if they can, bring in more developers, if they can some of the developers can create some really cool stuff on top of Caspa, if they can move towards being that, peer-to-peer payment cash settlement layer. Stable coins are launched on there, and people start using it instead of Tron as a stablecoin settlement layer. And then can they move into the 32 blocks per second and the 100 blocks per second that they claim that's going to happen after this cycle? So I'm just interested to see the milestones, and that might give us a good idea of where it can go in 2030. It's really difficult. I know a lot of people throw out numbers, but they're literally just blabbing out random numbers at this point because nobody knows. The best I can say is if they keep building, they keep doing what they say they're going to do, then it should, hold the test of time, or stand the test of time, and be around next cycle to even create a new all-time high for itself. Would be best case scenario. It could be top 10. That's very possible. If they continue to bring in devs, bring in users, and a lot of cool things are being built on top of it, and all those things I just mentioned. There's a ton of different avenues that they could go, and if they can capitalize a little bit of the market on, multiple layers of that, then they should be in good shape. How are you managing your tax? We just went over that. Just 40% in Australia, scared of selling and have to pay 40% tax, have to spend all my gains to get equal bag. Yeah, it's tough. I would transfer everything into stable coins when you're selling, and then I would only sell small amounts when you need money. But then again, I don't know if that's a bigger tax hit though or a smaller tax hit. I would find a good CPA, tax consultant guy where you live, that understands potentially how crypto works, and talk to them and see if they can help you out locally find some loopholes and, legal loopholes, and try and get you the most amount of money as possible out of that. And how the best way to sell one lump sum or multiple, like, they would know a lot more than I would, because I don't know much about the tax stuff here or there. Abel, this is a good comment because it rings very true. Never fall in love with any crypto. You never know what might happen. That is a fact, which is why I'm not going to tell people what they should do. But it's always, again, I'll say it again, it's better to cover your ass just in case. Take some profits, because you're not going to go broke taking profits. And buy back in the bear market when the price goes lower again. That's what I would recommend to people. Hold on to a little bit if you want to. But that's obviously, you can do what you want, but that's my recommendation. There's one last topic I wanted to cover, and that's the before we go eat some dinner, and that is the X page. I guess it was Caspa currency that just recently branded to Caspa City, which everybody's having a heart attack about. And I wanted to give you guys my thoughts. Since no one asked about it, I thought maybe somebody would ask this question. But that didn't happen. So I'm going to take it upon myself. So it's this page right here. It's Caspa City now. And all of the main influencers on X in the community are having a heart attack about who is running this page and why it rebranded to Caspa City, and that Caspa City sounds retarded and it's not a good name and blah, 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 blah. I'm going to say this. First of all, Caspa's decentralized. We are all Caspa. And one X page, whether it be, the main Caspa page on X or not, shouldn't matter. And if Caspa itself cannot function properly, I guess you could say, and not continue to improve, not continue to move forward because of one social media page, then Caspa should not exist, in my opinion. Because one social media page should not be able to make or break a fully decentralized cryptocurrency project. Bitcoin may or may not have had an issue like this in its early days, but why does it matter? I know this person's got these people have 249,500 subscribers, which is quite a lot for X. And now all they're doing is reposting everybody else's stuff and not coming up with new content and posts. But I look at this and just think how ridiculous it is that everybody's worried about one social media page. And I think that we should all grow up and move on and not really care. If the community doesn't like this page, then unfollow it and stop watching it. It's that simple. Somebody else start a page, and if you're good enough and you're putting out good information, then people will subscribe to you, and maybe you could become the next KASPA currency and make this one obsolete. There's just a lot of whining and crying I see, and we just got to get over that. And even people from the outside are commenting saying this is the dumbest rebrand ever, because Caspa City is a horrible name, but yet they're still talking about it. Right? Bad press, bad marketing is still marketing. Everything is a positive. They're talking about Caspa. And again, I think all of this drama, I guess you could call it, is because everybody's pissed off because the market's not moving up right now. And when the market starts moving up, nobody's going to care about this page and it being called Caspa City. And they're not going to care if they're coming up with new content or regurgitating and reposting everybody else's content. It seems super petty and doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I don't think, again, I'm going to reiterate that Caspa is not going to live or die by one social media Twitter page. And if it does die because of it, then it wasn't meant to be alive in the first place, because that's ridiculous. So that's my take on that. Just in case anybody has been watching or seeing this. Let me know in the comments section after the video is over what you guys think about all of that. I know it was a big page. I know it has a lot of subscribers, but like, let's grow up a little bit. Anyways, on that note, guys, I am going to peace out for the day. Continue to pack your damn bags before it's too late. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Love you all.